blue sniffers and spruce snippers, and welcome back to Blitzkrieg Modelworks. I'm Bob, you know me as Darkland Forums. How's it going, everybody? Tiger 1 project is done. This is the project I was doing for the 75th anniversary of the Tiger 1 entering service in World War II, as well as a memorial build for a friend of mine who owned this, who passed away September 2016. I did have a bunch of other stuff filmed to throw up before this, but something happened on the camera and I couldn't get the files. So where I left off, I was talking about where I was doing the starting on the groundwork, starting on the diorama base. Unfortunately, I'd had a whole thing done on the snow and how I did the road work. That's all gone, unfortunately. I do have the video where I show how I did all this long grass. So those of you that are on the Facebook page for the Tiger 1 build kind of saw a little bit of this. You'll see some more later on when I do the slideshow at the very end. For the snow, just to kind of summarize what I had before, I used Vallejo's snow texture, which is basically the same thing as their mud, except it's white instead of brown or gray. And I didn't really like it because it's the filler that they use. I'm sure Vallejo will say they use it for texture. They use a bunch of little things called micro balloons, or little tiny glass beads in there. And in the mud, it's not so bad. It actually does add some texture to the mud, but when in snow, you can't get this stuff smooth. It's very difficult to make it nice and smooth. I wanted a kind of nice flowing windswept look, especially down here where the figures are and on the sides of the road. So once it was down and it was dry, and it was really hard to work with, I could not get this stuff smooth to save my life. It stuck to everything. I tried, you know, polished stainless steel, I tried aluminum, I tried silicone, just silicone spatulas, it stuck. I tried using water, Windex, rubbing alcohol, spit as a lube. This stuff stuck to everything. So it was really hard to get the effect that I wanted to. So I ended up just using some of their other mud once I used all the white stuff up, just to kind of fill everything in, just to do the road work. And I kept it fairly thin, and I used the tracks that hadn't been put on the Tiger yet. And you can't really see it from here. You'll see it in the slideshow later. And I used some old Panther tracks, some DS tracks, so that's about all they're good for. And I've got a couple of sets of old wheels, like Kugelwagen wheels, and some cart wheels, horse-drawn cart wheels that I put together with some dowels at the right distance. I use those to make little troughs to make it look like there's a lot of traffic. Then for snow, I use baking soda. I know there's some people that'll say that the stuff turns yellow over time. I personally never had that happen, but I've seen it happen to other people, so maybe I'm just special. I used very lightly, just like I did for my Leopard 2 project. Ran it over, blew on it to give it the nice windswept look. I did the bottom part first with the two figures and the little German Shepherd, which is hiding in there. It's almost impossible to see him, which was the point. I did that first, and then used about 3 coats of hairspray. And the trick with this stuff is not to spray the hairspray like right on, because you'll end up blowing the snow, the baking soda, all over the place, or whatever you use for snow. It'll just blow it all over the place. So what I did is I set up a little table here in the shop, and I kind of sat back about 3 feet, and I kind of rained the hairspray down on top, and I'd do a coat and let it sit for half an hour, do another coat, let it sit for half an hour, masking off all the wood and the foam board, the black foam board that I used, so it wouldn't get any hairspray on it. Then I did the top, and that was after I put the road posts and the grass in place, because I wanted the snow to be inside there, so I sifted it on top without the tank on. And before I did the hairspray, I did the road work again with the wheels and tracks and the Tiger to put all those tracks into the snow, so it's in the groundwork in the mud, and then it's also in the snow. And then did the same thing. And then planted the figures, glued them down well. These guys have pins going through their feet into the base because they don't really stick too well to the baking soda. These guys are Tamiya figures. They're all right. The faces are a little bit on the rough side for, you know, when you compare them to companies like Masterbox or Mini Art or Dragon especially. These guys are all Verlinden figures. You'll see some close-ups later. I got them from a company in the States. They were not inexpensive because they're out of production. They were about 50 bucks Canadian plus shipping. And there was a few air bubbles in them, which I find rather suspect that they may not be actual Verlinden. The big key is they didn't come in the box that they usually do. But they were clean enough for me to be able to use, and I threw them in. Verlindens, the way that they usually have them posed is they're all looking kind of straightforward, and I kind of like the way that mine turned out, is they're all looking in the way that they pose, they look in different directions, so I kind of like that. It doesn't give that static, purposely posed look. You know, you have guys looking in all different directions, as if, you know, this guy's looking up as if, you know, he's looking for aircraft, and the commander's looking off to the side, maybe talking to another tank commander off to the side via radio. The driver, actually, the way I got him painted, he's looking, his face is straightforward, but his eyes are looking off to the right, whereas the bow gunner's just kind of daydreaming, dazing off. But other than that, the kit went together really well. All the aftermarket went on really well. Once the kit was on, I did the snow again, sprinkling on very, very little, blowing it off to give it the windswept look, then doing the hairspray. Now the hairspray on the figures does make them kind of semi-gloss. So then I just loaded up some dull coat in my airbrush and just whipped around, because this stuff doesn't move. It's pretty hard. You'd have to press fairly hard to break it, and then it'll break it and it'll come off in chunks. So you want to be careful not to touch the snow once it's done. So this is really good. I'm going to cut to a part where I talk about how I do the grass, because I did do that. I had a heck of a time figuring out how I was going to do this, and I filmed this about a month or two ago, so I'm pretty sure I talk about the YouTube channel that I discovered this technique on, called Terrain Tutors. They do typically wargaming stuff, but there's quite a few things that work over into modeling for larger scale stuff. So I'll go over that. It's like dirt simple compared to how I was trying to do it before. And then we'll go into a little turnaround where I'll talk a little bit more. It's about 5-6 minutes, something like that. And then I'll do a slideshow with about 10-12 pictures. Okay, so hang on and we'll be right back. To do the tall grass, I use Woodland Scenics Natural Straw and Harvest Gold, which are these two here, mixed approximately 2 parts natural straw to 1 part Harvest Gold, and then mixed up until you get this color, so there's no discernible bands of the yellow or the tan. And when I cut them to about this length here with a razor, you just use a regular razor, you can use your X-Acto, and I was trying to glue them on with white glue because I'd seen the Terrain guys doing that for wargaming, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't sticking. So in my YouTube feed one day there was a video recommendation for the Terrain Tutor, and I'll put the link to it in the description below, on making tall grass bushes. And I watched it and it was very interesting. I tried to do the same thing. It really wasn't working the way I'd like it to. So I modified his technique a little bit. And how they do it is they would, I cut in pieces this long, and using hot melt glue gun and some parchment paper, I put gobs of hot melt glue on the parchment paper and then dabbed the grass to make little tufts. And I used clear hot melt glue, so you can just glue it down and it kind of blends in. So I tried a little something a little different. On the parchment paper, I measured the distance between the fence posts. I actually did the same thing with the fence posts, by the way. Here's an extra fence post that I did. And while it was hot, I just sunk the fence post into the glue and then stuck the tufts in. I had measured in between, and then I put a run of hot melt glue in while this was sitting on an iron, like an ironing iron for your clothes, that I put in upside down in a vise with the parchment paper on, so I could stick this stuff in so it'd still stay warm. It did tend to kind of slump over because the glue is still warm, but then I could take the parchment paper off without burning my hands, and then before the glue completely solidified, I was able to tuft up the grass to get this nice little run, which kind of gives me my border between the road and the ivy, which I'll get to in a minute. So to put this stuff in, I mix the stuff together, I make sure I have an uneven end, and make sure that this end is fairly even. Trim it as necessary with a set of sharp scissors. And when you go in, you start closest or furthest away from you, I guess. You gotta wait for the stuff to come out, and then kind of slather it around a bit, and then quickly just do a little dab, dab. And it's still kind of soft for a bit, so you can kind of move stuff around to where you want. Sometimes you don't use all of it, so sometimes you can bunch it up a little bit so you can use all of it up. Put another little dab in. Just dab, 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 dab. Spread it around so it looks a little more natural. You will have to contend with the little strings of, the spider webs from the hot melt glue. Using a small flashlight, like I've got just a little flashlight, I can light up. You can't really see it. Well, I guess you can see it in the camera. I can see it pretty easily, so I can go in with a pair of tweezers and just tweeze out the pieces. They come out pretty easily. And then when you're done cutting, you'll have, a harsh end. So you just take your pieces and you just kind of tease them apart and move them around, up and down, back and forth, like so. Roll them back together, tuff them down, and then I found if you get real stragglers, you just kind of pull those out, put them back in till you get a nice, more or less evenish end, but you want it to look somewhat random, kind of like that. Take your razor blade, figure out how long you want them to be, and that's it. And then you can do the same thing with this side, tease it out. The stuff's pretty inexpensive. One pack of these was like $8 Canadian from the local hobby shop. You could probably get it cheaper online, but I was there anyway. Now for the ivy, I'm using an old Hudson Allen product called Ivy. And what it comes in is you get this little pack of these vines, which look suspiciously like a cleaning scrub pad in brown. I'm pretty sure you could buy a big cleaning scrub pad, no problem. And what they tell you to do on the back, they give you all these lovely instructions on the back. What they want you to do is basically tease this apart, like so. And then you can tease it apart from there, which is what I've done here. I super glued it to the top. I kind of folded it over, bent it really hard. It actually kind of stays in place. Super glued it in place, teased it apart some more. And they give you a package of these leaves. And for those that haven't seen stuff like this, getting stuff like forest litter and leaves is kind of hard in our scale. But these are very small birch seed casings. And these particular ones have been dyed, because usually they're like a light or kind of a brown and light tan, but these are green, so I'm pretty sure these have been dyed. And what they want you to do with these is glue these on. They just say to dab a little bit of white glue on here and there where you want the leaves and just kind of sprinkle them on. But being that this is going to be winter, I'll probably put a few on here and there for stragglers that didn't fall off before fall. But overall, like the snow that I'm going to blow on will kind of fill most of this in. And this will look a lot better than the original that I had, which had no road fence, no straw, none of that other, none of the ivy or anything else. So it'll make it a lot more visually interesting this way when it's done. Finished build. A little twirl for you. Turned out okay, not quite the way I expected, but I'll take it. The snow wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. The biggest challenge that I had was probably the road work and the grass. So the grass, like we said before, was the Woodland Scenics mixed a couple of colors together, put in with some hot melt glue, and then super glued on. The rocks are again Woodland Scenics rock molds. The culvert was made from styrofoam, the styrofoam insulation that you get for housing. The tree, which I'll do a little close-up later on, is homemade out of wire, coated with Vallejo mud texture. I've seen a few people do that. I'm not overly pleased with the texture, but the tree turned out okay. The ivy vines on the back are a defunct set from a company called Hudson and Allen. They're still around, but they don't carry nearly as much product as they used to back in the 90s. They used to do all kinds of stuff for dioramas. So it's this block that you get that's made of this material, and you have to pull it all apart, and then you glue it however you want. And then the leaves actually come with it. The leaves are birch seed casings, very, very small ones. And I just kind of scattered some on and used some hairspray to hold everything in place. The leaves on the ground were actually, I tried super gluing them in place, and that didn't work all that well with the baking soda, so I again used hairspray on everything to hold everything down. Like this stuff is pretty solid. You can't really do it over here. It's pretty solid. These two figures are Tamiya. One is from the Winter Assault Infantry set, and the other is their Soldiers at Rest set. Also in there, you can't really see it, it'll be in the pictures later on, I did the German Shepherd that's in there. He's laying down inside the culvert. The Tiger Crew is an old Verlinden set. They turned out actually pretty nicely. I noticed in the way Verlinden has them posed, they're all kind of staring straight forward. I kind of like the way that mine kind of fit with this kit, that they're kind of staring, looking kind of all over the place. The snow on the front, I just kind of splashed some white glue mixed with some water, about half and half with a brush, and then sprinkled some baking soda on. Once the vehicle was on, I kind of sprinkled some baking soda here and there and just blew on it to kind of give it a windswept look to it, and then sprayed hairspray on to hold it down. You'll see the stuff on the top of the deck and whatnot later on. I made sure the exhausts would have been fairly warm, so it would have melted all the snow, so I made sure to keep those clear. Baking soda in on the tracks, that was all sprinkled in, patted down. I had a paintbrush that would just fit in there, so I painted that all down. Just a little bit of water just to hold it in place. This is just black foam board, but it turned out pretty nice. I'll run the slideshow now and show you guys some of the close-up stuff. That's it. I'm going to start the slideshow. So again, thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't. Ding the little bell down there if you want to have updates of when I actually load stuff up when I have time. And I do appreciate it, guys. If you have any constructive comments, you want to see anything in particular, you want me to go into more detail with how I do some things, no problem. Let me know either in the comment section below, or you can message me privately. Okay? Thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.